we have here are procedure counts. We can see that there's already a value that's been defaulted in. This is the total knee replacement. The value that defaults in is going to be based on your proposed procedure. Now, what this field means is this count section that you're seeing under it, so this initial, second, third, and final count that you're seeing here, is what is the count that's being done for the total knee replacement. So these are the counts done for the total knee replacement. If you say, for example, book 2 procedures, say if they're also having arthroscopy, now you can see that this count section actually represents both procedures. So this was one count done for both of these. At any point, I can also go back in and remove this, and that will just signify that it's only being done for this procedure. Now, to clarify, at no point in time can you remove a procedure entirely. So if we try to remove the replacement, you can see the OK field gets grayed out. So there needs to be always at least one procedure in this first procedure counts field. So moving on, let's talk about our initial count. So the initial count, think of that as the control for all counts that come afterwards. So let's say, for example, we have these count items defaulted in. If we weren't using clamps, by deselecting that now deselects it from all future counts. If I were to reselect it, that would add it back in. One of the more significant fields we have here is our count not needed. So if there's a procedure that does not use counts, you need to go in and flag this field, which will cause all counts afterwards to become low lit. The reason why you need to go in and do this is select the count not needed is because in order to complete the record, either this field needs to be flagged, saying there are counts not needed, or this count section needs to be documented all the way through to the final count. So the final counts need to be documented. This is a requirement. This is hard-coded as part of the 608 counts enhancement. So again, if you don't need counts, you need to make sure you flag this. Otherwise, your users are not going to be able to complete the record. Now, getting into the documentation itself, I'm actually going to need to quickly jump out of this record, as this is currently set to the numeric workflow. The record that you have documented is going to be based on what you had set at the time of initial documentation. So I believe this Nancy Davis case should have the non-numeric workflow. However, I'm just going to need to confirm. Now, again, to reiterate, this is unlikely to happen. So whenever you're going through the build process, you need to determine first what kind of workflow you're going to be using. So, so it's unlikely that you're going to have a lot of cases being affected by this, as these toolbox parameter changes don't happen very often. So don't mind that error there. Again, it's very unlikely. It's very circumstantial. So now in this record, we have our non-numeric workflow. So this is very similar to what you had seen before. So again, I can deselect and reselect these. And then I can say who this initial count was done by. So previously, we'd only have about 2 users documented. Now we can have as many as needed. And one thing you may notice about this initial count is it doesn't have any correct, incorrect, or not applicable fields applied to it. So in this instance, if you don't have, the system's going to assume that the initial count will be correct because that's setting the number of items that are being counted. So again, as I mentioned before, that initial count is very in control of what goes on beneath it. So now going through the rest of these, I can choose to remove a count type that's not the final count. So these are the ones that defaulted in. So say I only need a second count. I can remove this. Lastly, if I want to remove the selected count type, so now we see it's been erased from the record. If I want to add back in, we can use this Add Count Type button. Let's say that was the third count. So I'll flag this, hit OK. Now we'll add a count type in beneath where you were last highlighted. I can also do the same thing where if I want to add another count item, so if I want to add these scissors, this will add it in. So I'll add it into the initial and all counts afterwards. If you want to free text an item in, hit cancel and it will give this new count item and you can free text one in here. And so now we go through the rest of this. We document who did the counts, flag whether it's correct or incorrect. Just going to go through and quickly document these. And then again, in order to complete the record, we need to have this final count documented. Just very quickly while I'm documenting this, are there any questions, quick questions that I can answer in the chat? All right, so now we've documented all that, the record would be good to complete. The requirement made by the count is now satisfied. Now down here, you'll notice there's another procedure count field. So that's the law that we just saw before. Well, what we can do here is we can actually add an entirely new count section. So say we're doing two procedures, and each procedure needs its own count section. So I can add in the total knee arthroscopy again. Hit OK. And now you can see an entirely new count section is pulled in. So your initial, second, third, final count. And everything that's defaulting in is going to be driven again by the procedure group that the procedure is a part of. Now I could pull this in and I could just as easily again say count not needed. And so again, we have that override label I mentioned before. We have that surgeon given count. So this could be something different than surgeon notified. And we can flag the rest of these fields, whether or not it did or did not take place. This will not affect your ability to complete the record. And one last field I want to show in terms of our count enhancement for non-numeric is changes to the actual procedure. There is one new footer button that's been added to this. So kind of the background to this case is that it was booked for just a total knee replacement on the left, but we saw before that I added another set of procedure counts. So that means that there's a new procedure added to the record that's kind of lingering. So now instead of having to pull in the procedure, document everything that was done here, I can actually just go down to this Get Counted Procedures footer button. I hit this. This will add in that total knee arthroscopy. I'll confirm it. And now you can see that that's been pulled in. Okay. Are there any last questions before I jump over to a numeric workflow? Okay. At this point, I'm just going to go ahead and cancel out of this case just so we have it, so we can retain the documentation, or we don't need to save the documentation here. So I'm going to jump back over to that Bernard Jones case. So again, in order to use the numeric workflow within your toolbox parameters, you need to make sure that the use numeric workflow is flagged to yes, and that you have a initial and final count type filled into those fields. That is a requirement, again, of only the numeric workflow. So in terms of the numeric workflow, the only major difference between this and the non-numeric is that we actually will document the number of items used. So when doing the initial count, I could say I'm using 5 blades. Use 6 of these. And I can use 5 sutures. So again, this is setting the number that are documented for the initial count. And everything that we documented down here is going to be based on that. So when documenting the second count, you could say that it was, if we're flagging it as correct, that references the count, the number of items up here. So say that there's 6. Now let's say I needed to, at the second count, some new needles were added. At that point, I'm just going to document the number of new needles. So I can say there are 2 additional added on. And that means that from now on, we're counting for 6 needles. Flag that as correct. And now we can do the same thing for the third count. So again, you can see that a lot of it's going to be the same. The only difference is that we've documented the number of counts in the beginning. And now coming down to the final count, we have a total field now. So this is not editable at all. The system will be taking the number documented for the initial count and then combining it with any additional numbers added into the additional fields and documenting the total. And now for the final count, you're going to need to document the actual number of items counted for the final count. So if I said 5, it'll calculate the difference of 0, again 6. Say if there was 7 used for the needles, if we added another one, it'll show that difference at the end. But if we, for example, documented 4, then the difference will show as a -1, and that should serve as a unaccounted item. So that will be very obvious here. I can document 4 again. Flag this is correct. These are added, and then this is going to be flagged as incorrect. And again, it has the same basic functionality for all the other fields, so we can add a whole other set of counts. We can document who it was counted by. The only difference is, again, we're documenting these items. Now, again, I have to quickly point out and apologize for the screen jumping. This is something that development is aware of and is working on. So whenever you document these items, there may be a bit of screen jumping. Again, that has been brought to our attention, and it is being worked on. So any questions now for the numeric workflow? Okay, just for the sake of being able to complete the record, I'm now going to go ahead and just hit count not needed. If I did count not needed and this information is present on the record, it'll give me this warning. I can mark it anyway, and that will still low light everything here. Okay, so that about does it for our count enhancement. I'm going to go ahead and leave this up. Let's jump right back into our PowerPoint. And now we're going to move on to our largest new enhancement to 608, which is our implantable devices. So this enhancement allows users to access a centralized implantable devices routine to document implantable devices on a patient. This enhancement links to the new Global Unique Device Identification Database, also known as the GUD ID, and introduces the MIS Unique Device Identifier Dictionary. This allows users to document in the operative record implants tab using a unique device identifier. You can also now scan these unique device identifiers to have them pull into the record. And any implants with a unique device identifier associated to them will flow to the EMR implantable devices section in the summary panel. And during the presentation, I'm going to show a brand new enhancement that came out very recently, which is GFINS 4606. This now enables the integration of implantable devices between OR and materials management. So I'll show a little bit of that during the build process. So our new implantable devices is now part of the ARRA Meaningful Use Stage 3 requirements. And so it was coded to meet those standards. We can actually now access our centralized list, our centralized database of implants via the GUD ID website. Again, that's via accessgudid.nlm.nih.gov. We also have our best practice on our Meditech website. So if we go into our customers page, go down to our regulatory page here. On the left here, you'll see eligible hospitals ARRA best practices. If we go into the 6.0, then we'll click on stage 3. And if you scroll down a little bit, see the implantable device link here, which will link you to our best practice for 608. So this best practice outlines the build, the necessary setup, and the documentation of these new unique device identifiers and how to associate them to your implants. So again, we highly recommend referencing this during any build process or any documentation early on, just so you have a firm understanding of how these new unique device identifiers work. All right. So getting into the system. So the first place you're going to go is into our new MIS Unique Device Identifier Dictionary. So this can be found under Info Systems, MIS, Dictionaries, Clinical, Unique Device Identifier, and Enter Edit. Again, I know it's a long pathway, but it's Info Systems, MIS, Dictionaries, Clinical, and Unique Device Identifier. So opening up this field, this dictionary. This dictionary links to that GUD ID that I had pulled up before. All the information that's going to populate within these fields is going to be pulled from that website, and the fields themselves are not going to be editable. So if I go back into the GUD ID page, in this example, I've pulled in an implant. This is a Cardinal Health device. You see this code next to it, which also matches the primary DI number. So this is your unique device identifier. You can either find this on the website and it will be attached to the side of your packaging for your implant. For the sake of today's demonstration, I'm just going to go ahead and hit copy just to show how it gets pulled in to the system. Let's get back into the dictionary. We have this field here. What I'm going to do is I can either manually enter this, so I could type this out, so it's 406. Yep. Or I can actually scan this into this field using a scanner and the barcode that will be present on the packaging. So I hit enter. We'll get this pop-up here which says new device found in the GUDID. Save to add it to this dictionary. Hit enter, that'll close it out. So basically what that means is this dictionary itself, we're not going to edit any of these fields. All the information here is being pulled in from the GUDID, and all we need to do to create the dictionary is just hit save. Again, it's very quick to build these out, and there's actually a couple different ways we can build it out. If we want to actually see the information that's getting pulled in, you can see the brand name, again, matches with the brand name field here, the version or model number, the company name, and then you can even find the GMDN preferred term name. That can be found when we scroll under our device characteristics, the GMDN. Then even some other different fields will populate. So, for example, we have the MRA safety label, safety on label, and even in the packaging DI, it'll have a package device identifier number associated to it. Yeah, not all implants will have that associated to it, but that is just for packaging information. So if I were to go down to alternate and additional identifiers, I can even see which ones will have a package DI number and the quantity of them per package. So again, this is just more information that the dictionary is pulling in. And we're going to actually see this information populate in different areas when it gets associated to an implant. Now I could actually go ahead and save this right now and it would be built into the system, but I want to show that there are some other ways to have this get pulled in. So for now I'm going to go ahead and cancel. I'll just close this dictionary out. So the next place I want to go is actually back in ORM. So I'm going to go to Ancillary, Operating Room Management, Dictionaries. I go into Inventory, go into Inventory Items. So I'll pull in our inventory. We have an ORM implants inventory built. I'm going to perform a lookup looking for a previously documented item. So you can do this in your placement system. So now with this new field, really the only new enhancement that's been made to this dictionary, if we go over to this UPN/device identifier field, or a tab, excuse me, we have this new device identifier field here. Now what we can do is we can either perform a lookup, and this will look to the MIS Unique Device Identifier Dictionary. We could also we can scan in the UDI itself through the UDI barcode, or I can just copy paste or manually document, and upon hitting enter, you'll see a very familiar pop-up. So the new device found in the GUDID, save to add it to the Unique Device Identifier Dictionary. So all we need to do to have this dictionary entry be created is to hit save to the OR Inventory Item Dictionary. So this is definitely helpful if you're trying to streamline the build a bit. So if you're building out your implants, you can just scan in this code here, and you don't have to go back and physically document in the MIS dictionary. So hit save. And now that device identifier is now associated to that implant. Every implant that you build can only have one device identifier associated to it. Some implants have secondary ones as another means of scanning them in, but in terms of the primary device identifier, they can only have one. And as that's been associated to it, that can actually enable a lot of functionality within the system that's really exclusive for those implants with unique device identifiers. So for right now, I'm actually going to show off the new, I'm going to show the new GFINS 4606. Again, that's GFINS 4606, which I believe is coming with either the 25 or 26 priority pack release. I have to check on again which one it is. My memory is not allowing me to, but so now we're actually going to go into materials management to show this, and this will be within our T-ring because it is at the correct release. I'll go into materials management. I'm going to go into the item stock processing desktop. And again, this is going to be handled by your MM team, and the MM specialist that you have at Meditech can certainly help with this process. But right now, I just want to show what it looks like when that will get pulled across. So, excuse me. I'm going to go into our enter edit stock. I'm going to pull up an inventory that was built. So we have an implant inventory. I'm going to pull up this 830A item we have here. So now that we have it here, where the dictionary itself, or the system itself is going to look to this device identifier field to pull the information from the stock into your OR implants, or your OR inventory items on the OR side. Now, in order to get the device identifier here, we can't type anything here. We need to make edits to the item data itself. So this is item 000830A. So I'm going to go into enter edit item. Okay, so we're going to pull in this item here. So in order to make the unique device identifier flow over, we need to have a vendor associated. It needs to have the catalog number, and it needs to have a manufacturer. So this needs to be the correct manufacturer that you found on the GUDID website, matching with the company name. So the manufacturer here is Cardinal Health. So if I go back into the GUDID itself, you can see that this is Cardinal Health as the company. And then we just need to make sure that this catalog number is correct. So the catalog number is actually right here. So that's this entry. You can copy and paste that in, or when you scan it in, that information will default. Now the field that we need to place the actual device identifier in is under the GTIN. So that's in a footer here. Or when you're creating the item on the MM side, or when your MM end users are creating it on their side, there will be a GTIN footer button available on the enter item screen. So within here, we just need to pull in the unique device identifier, and we hit enter. So let's pull in a different one. I think I had another example here as that's already being used. It's already being used. All right, well, let's pull up a different item. Let's pull up that item in particular. That was 830. Again, apologies, it looks like the system is looking to something that was already previously set up. Again, if we go into the G10, you see that there's already one pulled in here. If we were to pull in a UDI number here, you'll get that same pop-up that says that a new device was created in the MIS dictionary. And then we just need to enter in the units that are being used, the manufacturer, and then we should be good to go. You don't need to associate a cost to it if you don't want to. And when we hit save, so I'll update it on the stock side. Again, apologies that the prompt isn't coming up. That was due to it's just due to some setup on my end. So I'm going to look for this item. This is in the stock side of things. So we'll go into implants. Excuse me again. This is via the enter edit stock. All right, so if we go to the stock issue, again, we can see that the device identifier has now populated in this field for the item. Again, I apologize, the road is a little rocky to get here, but promise you just enter the unique device identifier into the G10 field. It'll create the new entry in the MIS dictionary, and then the device identifier will populate into this field as long as you have the manufacturer and that catalog number associated. And then if you initialize this item over to the OR side, I'll jump back over to the inventory items there. Now again, this area is populating this current smart data. If this pertains to the smart interface, this is something that's exclusive to the T-Ring, so there's no need to worry about that. This button will be available unless you're using the smart interface. So again, we go to the UPN/unique device identifiers, and now this field has populated automatically. This was not documented previously. It flowed over from MM with the rest of the information available here. So just very quickly, just to check out, are there any questions about that process? Again, that's a lot on the MM side. A lot of the information that is entered there, again, is all handled by MM. And if you need additional information, I would encourage you to reach out to your specialist. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save, and we're going to continue with the documentation back in the training ring. All right, so now that we have, the implant that we want associated with the UDI that we pulled in, now we can start to get a bit into documentation. Again, just want to check up on the item that's being used to confirm. All right. All right, so the UDI is associated. Let's close that out. I'm going to jump back into our case that was being documented on before. So I'm going to go into our Implants tab. And there's a couple different ways that we can pull this in. As per usual documentation, we could perform a lookup on the items, and we could pull in the implant itself. So I could pull this in this way. Or, alternatively, another way is if I use the Scan Use button, I can actually scan in that UDI barcode. So I'm going to hit paste here. And you can see that the the inventory item that is associated to has now been pulled into the record automatically, and Use is defaulting in. So because I hit Scan Use again, the Use is going to default into 1. If you scan it again, it will add on another number to that. Again, that's if you're implementing scanning. So while I'm in here now, I can go down to this Manufacturers tab. This manufacturer is going to default in because that's what was built in the OR Inventory Item Dictionary. And then the surgeon is going to default based on the proposed surgeon. And if I pull in a quantity, so if there was 1 used, you can pull in the lot number. If there's any of this information is associated to the implant, it'll default in. You can also see that this site and donation ID field, they're grayed out. And normally this would not be a grayed out field. But if we go back into the GUD ID website, so that was the, so again, we have the donation ID number not being defaulted in. So you'll see a lot of these fields have like a yes or no at the end of them. So if I expand these, so you can see that the donation ID number here is flagged to no. If it's flagged to no, then it will not get pulled in. But the rest of this can be pulled in based on what's scanned in, or you can manually enter it. Again, just for the sake of today, we don't necessarily need to document this. And I can even pull in other implants if I need to, just for the sake of demonstration. Just pulling another implant from the implant inventory. Yeah. So at this point, are there any questions? I'll be in the Q&A that I can address about the documentation. All right, again, if you have follow-up questions that you might not be able to get around to today, please feel free to open up a task with your assigned specialist. You can even mention me by name if you need to, if you want to get me to follow up. Again, my name is Peter Swan. Yeah, so right now, okay, so since that quantity down there was documented as 1 and it came up as used 2, it gave me that error. So again, that's just making sure that documentation is accurate. And right now, I actually am just going to go through and quickly fulfill the requirements for completing this case. While I do that, I also want to show that there has been another change to the actual procedures field with this enhancement. So you'll notice down here we have the two implants. So just like how we associate counts to a procedure, we're now associating implants to procedures. So so now we're going to determine which ones these are added to. So if I add in, let's say I add in that total arthroscopy. Now what I can do is if I go back over to the total knee replacement, if I were to change this quantity to 0, if I go over to the total knee arthroscopy, you'll see that this implant has now been associated to this procedure. So this is just documenting when was the implant put in and for what procedure. Now if I save this, it will appear like that on the record. Now I'm just going to finish off the process of documenting. And this way we can show the last portion for our unique device identifiers. Hit save. Just while I'm here, I'm also going to add in some extra data here. So you can add in the catalog number. So I can just free text these in. If this information is on your unique device identifier, then it will pull into the record. If not, you can free text in, or it can also be pulled in by scanning. All right, I'm just going to add that in to show how the information flows. All right, so now everything's been documented that we need to go ahead and verify this record. Close this desktop. And I'm going to go into our billing maintenance desktop that can be accessed via ancillary, operating agreement management, and billing maintenance desktop. All right, so we have our Bernard Jones case. Go ahead and verify it. Now the information is going to flow over to the EMR summary panel. Just give it a quick second, so that way the information can completely flow. So I'm going to just go ahead and hit open chart. And you can see under this implantable devices section here, we have a couple new entries. This information flowed over from the OR to here. The only reason why these implants are appearing is because there is a unique device identifier associated to them in the item implants or the OR inventory items dictionary, and the case was verified. In order for any of your end users to access this section here, the users would have to have their person profile edited to allow access to implantable devices in the EMR. So just to quickly show this, I just want to stress the difference between these two different sources here. So here, We have an implant that was placed on the 14th. This was created within PCM. So you can see the source here is listed as PCM. And here we can see a new implant that's documented, which was the Cardinal Health. All the information that you're seeing beneath it, this device identifier, version, manufacturer, these may look familiar. That's because this is the information that's coming from the MIS Unique Device Identifier Dictionary. And any of the information documented down here was what we free texted into the fields while documenting within the Implants tab. Now, there is more that can be done here via PCM in terms of these implantable devices. And for this is the extent of OR's enhancements for the implantable devices. You can document implants here. But again, this is something that kind of goes beyond what we're going to be covering today. If you would like, you can open up a task and I can certainly provide more information. Again, we have our best practice on the regulatory page that outlines all this functionality, as well as the build within OR. At the moment, I do not believe that there is best practice documentation for the build within materials management. As soon as that's available, I can certainly notify you should you like to be notified. And if you need any additional information, we can certainly do our best to get the information out to you. So at this point, that concludes all the enhancements we're covering today. I'm going to turn it over for some questions that are documented throughout the presentation. So Kayla, what kind of questions we're looking at?
So just to repeat to everybody, we have a question that asks, will this enhancement make the implant information display in the EMR summary panel? This was asked before you had showed that. So as you guys know, that now will flow to the summary panel so long as there is an entry in the MIS Device Identifier Dictionary and as soon as the case is verified or deferred. Then we have another question. Will this be part of the CCD also?
So currently, there are enhancements for having information flow to the CCD has been built. However, there is some functionality missing that's prohibiting it from working properly. And for reference, there is a change submitted with development that is coded, I believe it is IOP 12408. So again, that's IOP 12408. Once this is coded, it will allow the implantable devices to flow properly from the EMR to the CCD. And again, in regards to the CCD, that's all information that's pulled from the EMR. It's not pulled from OR directly. So in here, the information you're going to see is that so both of these will flow, but again, this is just documented within OR. That's as far as us and OR have the ability to reach to communicate with the CCD. Any additional questions? So again, to recap, we went over our hard copy format, our sketch edits to update record, the edit and undo assessments, then our external immunizations, the new counts enhancement, and the implantable devices.
If anyone would like documentation on the best practice for 608 for specifically ORM with the implantable devices, I would just open a task with your specialist and we can add that documentation there in that task for you.
Yep, and that's again if you're unable to find it kind of buried within our within these links. Going back out, if we go to Meditech's website, again, go to customers, and go over to the regulatory page here on the side. So regulatory. Under the R resources, we have our eligible hospitals, our best practices. You click on 6.0. Then we're going to click on stage 3. And if we scroll down under the supporting documentation, you can find the implantable devices link here, which will link to our implantable devices best practice. So this will contain screenshots, detailed explanations, and any information you may need in terms of setup and documentation. All right, again, at this point, are there any last questions? If you'd like a copy of this slideshow or a copy of the webinar recording, please open a task with your assigned ORM specialist, and they can upload the information to the task for you. And again, to reiterate, we also have our different documents for our external immunizations in the form of KV Article 55367 for the external immunizations, and KV Article 52587 for the counts routine, detailing the setup and workflow. All right, at this point, if there are no further questions, thank you everyone for joining this single topic webinar on our 608 enhancements. Again, my name is Peter Swan, joined by Kayla Rallis. If you need any additional information, of course, please feel free to contact us. And I hope everyone has a wonderful day. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good week.